Hey, movie lovers, welcome back for another Anatomy of Movie here at Popcorn Talk. It's October. It means it's Halloween. There's hell on earth, and what better place to go than, of course, at Hellfest. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We enter the depths of hell and feast. We have Demetri Panos.
Hey, movie fans. Hey, Phil. How's it going?
It's better than those kids.
Did you survive Hellfest?
I did. I survived Hellfest, and I'm here to tell about it. I am Phil Svitek. Missing in action today is Marissa Serafini, although she is safely in the engineer booth at the moment.
Right.
We are talking about Hellfest, of course, the movie from CBS. And for those of you new to the show, first off, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time to check us out. First, right off the bat, to note is we are spoiler-filled, meaning that we assume you've seen the movie, so we're going to talk about it from that perspective. We will not only talk about the plot lines, but we're going to go behind the scenes and talk about the making of, and of course, the box office and the reception, or the lack of reception in this case. There's your tease for that. And last but not least, if you want to follow along, we do provide a link to our research. It's in a PDF that you can download in the description box, so you can follow along. But without further ado, let us begin, and where we always begin is with our overall impressions. So, Demetri, what did you think?
It wasn't miserable. I respected and appreciated this movie for what it was, and it truly was it's a B schlock horror movie. Not unlike all of the Halloween and Friday the 13th ripoffs that happened after each respective movie came out in the very late 70s, very early 80s. So liken it to a Terror Train, a Hell Night, a Prom Night type of a movie. It started off, it started off to me as if the characters, like they were like Rob Zombie written, like I wasn't liking them. Mm-hmm. I'll just say that. But as the movie started to go along and things started to happen, I got into the movie. I thought the second half was better than the first half. The introduction to our killer I thought was very interesting, and I think the concept itself is extremely interesting. We'll talk about the concept and how I actually felt years ago when I first moved here, of being in my own little bit of a Hellfest out here in LA doing a particular parade. But yeah, my thing is that if you're going to go full boat in doing this retro kind of a movie, and it had it all. It had the killer, it had like the teenagers, it had this really great environment and setting. It had blood and gore all over the floor. Nobody with a spoon. It didn't really what I was expecting is the wink nod. Like it didn't have like the body count at the end. When the lone survivors are running away and they see their friends like in various disarray of death, let's say. And I was sort of kind of expecting that in this movie. And I thought that since everything else was stylistically fun, I thought this would have happened. I was surprised at the neat little twist that sort of kind of happened at the end. It made me go, okay, this is going to be interesting if there is a Hellfest 2, which I'm not entirely sure. All in all, I did have fun watching this horror movie. Not the be-all, end-all of horror movies. I've seen better this year, and I'm hoping to see better within the next week or so. But all in all, not too bad.
See, for me, normally, like writers and so forth, they start with the bullet points. We start, we kind of lay it out, and as an outline, even if you read the Wikipedia description, it's interesting.
Sure.
But then you got to fill in the gaps. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they didn't fill in the gaps. They had a good premise. I think a lot of the elements were there, but they didn't execute them. A lot of the stuff was just there to be there. In particular, one of the most egregious parts of the movie was, it's been hard. Let's go to Spain. Okay, we're going to Spain.
Yeah, I mean,
you're gonna eat tapas, and I'm gonna be topless. All right.
I don't.
Sure.
Again, that to me was one of the weak. Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%, and it kind of comes out of nowhere. It's like they didn't mention any. Like that whole dynamic between those kids. I felt like I walked in the middle of something because I knew really nothing about them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And that's okay, but you got to, you know, a movie's got to play out, and you got to start to understand what is important to them.
Right.
And by that respect, if you know, to kind of kick things off, you know, the main plot point or the I don't know, perhaps like from the character's perspective, Natalie's seems to be our main character, and her biggest thing is she wants things to go well with Gavin. He's the first one killed, so if things can't go well, like that entire storyline then becomes null and void.
Right.
Obviously, she doesn't know until much later in the movie that he's dead, and that's a possibility. But it just seemed very much like, okay, where are we going with this?
Yeah, I felt the same way, but I sort of kind of looked at that as being kind of clever and, dare I say, a little bit bold, because you did kill off this character that you felt was going to at least make it to the last quarter of the movie, and he gets capped pretty early and really pretty well. So to me, I thought that was kind of a bold move. And again, but it goes back to my, like, there was no body count or whatever. Because here's the premise, you're right, is cool. And they set it up really good, because it starts with that murder of a girl in an amusement park, and then the body is used as a prop. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, okay, we're going to see our hapless victims as part of mazes, and that's how we're going to have the body count or whatever, but we never see them again, really.
Maybe I want to ask you this, and
Yeah.
this showcases perhaps a little bit of stupidity or naivety on my part, but when they showed that opening scene, I thought, okay, we're right in the middle of it, then we're going to backtrack how we got here. And because all the women that he initially killed looked exactly like Natalie. Mm-hmm. So the first girl that supposedly happened, that was years ago, and she kind of looked like Natalie. Then the girl he stalks, that he kills in front of Natalie, looked somewhat similar to Natalie. And so I got confused as to, okay, is basically this where we're headed? He's going to kill Natalie. So I don't know. I know everyone's probably commenting like, oh, how could you be so stupid? But I think a simple thing of, like, 3 years later or something like that. Because what really confused me was, what's her name? Taylor and those guys, they were making fun of it. Like 3 years ago, somebody was killed, blah, 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 haha. It's like, oh, no, they're just joking. I was like, wait, are they really or are they not?
Well, see, and I did, again, I understand what you're saying. Not stupid. I mean, but I just did take it that when they said, like, I just felt that it was at a Hellfest prior or some other type of haunted maze kind of thing prior to what our kids are going to go through. So when they mentioned 3 years, like, somebody died and they didn't know until they smelled the body and it was actually one of the things. And yeah, 3 years is a long time, and there should have been some semblance of a title card, like 3 years ago, present day, something, and the director, Gregory Plotkin, he himself has said that Halloween is his favorite movie, and Halloween starts off with a title card that says, like, 1963, and then Halloween today, like, present. So we know that 15 years have passed. It's 1978. And it's not uncommon in horror movies to use that device, but he didn't use it here. So I wouldn't say it's stupid. I can understand the confusion.
The flip is also true, because sometimes you start at the end, or like right at the kind of climax right before the end and say, 3 weeks earlier, like, what got us to that point.
Right.
I'm thinking, like, War Dogs, for example, is like that, but there's plenty of hundreds of examples.
There's tons of movies like that. I didn't put the visual together, which makes sense. and maybe to an extent it might almost tie into the very, very end of the movie, which we'll talk about later, I guess. Even before we don't spoil it now, but I felt the killer was keying on people who seemed to be mocking the whole maze horror nights kind of thing, and like the false bravado. Oh, I don't get scared. Oh, it's silly to be scared. And he seemed to key in on that and make them scared to death, literally. Because that happened throughout the entire... That was a setup of the first death that we saw. And even the one that took place in front of Natalie, that girl said the same thing too.
Yeah, I believe that girl's name was Brittany, not that any would have known that. Right. So, okay, that's an interesting premise, because in that sense, do you think he would have left Natalie alone? Because he gives her that we have basically a silent agreement, but Taylor turns around and gives him the finger multiple times. Minimum wage worker bum. Absolutely.
I mean, you don't do that to a man behind a mask. like seriously. I mean, it's a thing. I go to these horror maze things. I've been through a good handful in my lifetime, and to me, the fun is that that you're going to be scared, but there are always those people who have that bravado. Oh, this is so silly. It's like, why'd you pay the money to go do this? Not that I'm going to go and put on a mask and start killing these people. But that was like, you always hear that when you go to those types of, you can always hear it or see it somewhere. So that's what I thought that the killer was keying in on. So I found it interesting that you keyed in on a more visual sense, which in a sense, like where I was going, well, we'll just talk the end. When we see what happens at the end, the killer comes home, we'll see him in a workshop, puts the mask down, puts something else down. I forget what that was.
The photos.
The photos.
From the photo booth.
And then walks into the house. And we see a little girl watching TV, and he starts doing the pop goes the weasel. And you're like, okay, what's going on here? And she says, Daddy. And we never see the face of the killer, which I thought was interesting. I guess when you think of it, she could grow up to be a girl that looks like Natalie. Maybe. But, who knows? Who knows what the motivations are? And that's one of the things, too, pardon me, that I found kind of creepy, because you don't know what's motivating this person to do what he's doing.
It is interesting, like, by that logic, if he's just going after people that have sort of wronged him, I mean, Taylor should be front on that list. Gavin didn't do anything. Natalie, she's scared as can be. She certainly didn't do anything. So it's the ones that quote unquote should deserve to die by that logic is Taylor and Brooke.
I think they were all guilty by association. I think the deeming as putzes. They're like yuppie scum or whatever, And then they also did sort of kind of stand up to him. And even, what was the boyfriend's name again? Gavin. So, yeah, I mean, and I think he was just going to whittle down until he got to his main victim to show, look what I did. All because of your, I don't know, ignorance or blasphemy of horror parks. Damn you!
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it for sure. But yeah, that was the interesting part, was why, right? And I think in that sense, when you have one of the things, I agree with you as far as the kill count, because we have a group of 6 and 4 people die. Now, granted, we get the 2 extra deaths, but that only takes the kill count to 6.
Right.
And I think that what wasn't as fun for me was, if you're not going to be about your main characters and they're going to kind of be killed off or maybe one saved, then be about the killer and just, in a way, we're all living out our fantasies and he's just killing everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It sucks to say, but like there is fun in that, where, hopefully if you're someone like you or me, that you're just enjoying it from the perspective of like, oh, I would never do this, but it's good to get my demons out.
Sure.
Through a visual medium.
Yeah, I mean, and I get that, and a low body count is fine. Like, I wasn't complaining necessarily about the low body count, but I felt that I believed that the premise was to use the bodies, and they were going to be part of the maze, like the dead body. Instead of it being a mannequin, it was going to be like a real deadly, like a real body. It was sort of in a way, as much as almost like a House of a Thousand Corpses kind of a thing, which had this similar theme of using the dead bodies instead of mannequins. But I felt that, and that's an interesting premise to me. Like when you're in a maze and arms are sticking out of something or legs are coming down, and you just assume it's all fake. Like, and then if you're coming up and, you know, there's something in front of you, like a maquettes and like some scene where somebody's head is bashed in, but it's an actual body of head bashed in, that's frightening. And when you don't know, and when you're in that situation, when it's so crowded, well, or not so crowded. That was the other thing that sort of kind of got me about this Hellfest is I've been to these things, the lines, it wasn't crowded. I'm like,
VIP bitches.
But there's no VIP for a bathroom. That was the emptiest bathroom at an event like this that I've ever seen in my life. And again, I get the VIP passes to go by that line, because the regular line is 3 hours. That's how crowded these things get. And this looked, you know, maybe they didn't have it in the budget to get more extras. I don't know. But it wasn't.
I think it would have complicated too many things.
Yeah.
And
maybe. I don't know.
I think that's what it is, because you want it. But when you kind of talk about like a kill count and whatever, like that, therein lies the fun. Okay, you start with going after one person, but all of a sudden there's multiple people there. Okay, got to kill you. Slash.
Right.
Moving on to the primary target. I do want to, because I joked about it, VIP bitches. It's my jumping off point to talk about Gavin, who I thought was the more inconsistent character, because he has that line, that bravado at the beginning, and he's like handing out, like, again, VIP bitches.
Right.
And it shows that, okay, he's got some cojones maybe, or whatever you want to call it. And then he's one of the lamest people imaginable.
Yeah, he's sort of like, well, yeah, it's like yeah, I was thinking, no, yeah, he sort of almost like me. Like he was the gentleman, or he was like the overly nice guy, but he couldn't win at any one of the games, which I thought was really funny. He kept on paying money. Those games suck.
But I thought he, like, if he's gonna be, I thought he'd be like at least a rich kid, because he's like, I like the game where you exchange money.
Yeah, but what I didn't get is, how did he get all the VIP tickets? Like, what did he work for? He bought them for, well, okay.
That's what I assume.
He has to be rich if he bought them, because those things ain't cheap at any kind of horror fest to do that kind of thing. I thought it might have been through his job, but I found his character somewhat interesting. I get how he was being set up as the romantic, like, it made no bones who our quote unquote heroine was going to be. But to your earlier point too, there's where the confusion lies, because you think it's going to be her and Gavin, right? Mm-hmm. But actually the movie's really more focused on Veronica and her
Brooke.
Natalie and Brooke. Natalie and Brooke. And then it becomes, like, okay, so they kill Gavin, and it's like, all right, so he's dead early. Who are they going to focus on? And is she going to be the heroine who's running away and escaping and trying to get away from it all and have the last standoff with the killer? Wasn't necessarily the case. It really started to focus more on her relationship with her best friend. That sort of kind of came out of nowhere. Hence, let's go to Spain, which comes out of nowhere in an empty bathroom.
Yeah. Hey, nothing's better than tapas and topless in Spain.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good way to look at it, of that shift. And what was interesting, like, they didn't never talked about Gavin. I mean, Brooke egged her on and was certainly crude about it at certain points, but they never had like a meaningful conversation. Like, instead of talking about Spain, they could have had a talk about Gavin of like, oh, well, he's, how do you feel about him getting you a stuffed teddy bear?
Right.
Things are looking good, huh?
Yeah. No, I looked at Gavin. If I'm going to go throwback, Gavin was the Ben Tramer of Halloween, except Ben Tramer in Halloween was never really seen until poor kid gets hit by a car and torched in Halloween 2. But he was the person that Laurie Strode sort of kind of had a crush on. And that character was, well, if used as, Laurie, if you help me babysit my kids, I'll set you up with Ben Tramer. And he ended up being, in a sense, like this. He was the one that they were setting him up. Oh, he says you're really cute and he likes you and he was asking for you and all that stuff. And then they meet, and I will give props. I thought how he was killed was somewhat clever because they set it up like he's trying so desperately hard to get the stuffed animal that he goes to the lockers of the characters where they supposedly have the cachet of all of these prizes, and he sees the mallet, the big mallet, and he goes to pick it up, and he's like, whoa, and he can't pick it up. But yet our killer walks by and one-handedly, and I was like, oh, he's a pretty strong individual. And
that's where, like, it was just such a disconnect. I wish, had he struggled to pick it up, but he picked it up somewhat and, like, wobbled with it, that's different than just the guy can't even pick it up. I'm sorry. I just, Gavin, I think, is the most
wimpy
and weird character in existence. And no offense, like, I don't think it's his necessarily acting skills, but just the way he's looking for all these dolls, in a sense, it's like, which one's going to be, just pick one.
Yeah.
Or just, I don't know. What was missing from that moment of, oh, she likes Nightmare Before Christmas. Where's a Jack one? Or she likes whatever. Just like you're searching for a specific one.
Right.
Rather than which one of these is the best.
Yeah. 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 So, again, it just goes, these characters really weren't written tremendously well. And again, I didn't get a sense. I mean, and this is what, like, going back to like throwback, the Friday the 13th series, as it went along, you were rooting for the bad guy. You were like, would you just please kill him or her already? Just have them shut up. They are annoying. Done. And you're cheering for, like, that shift happened where you were really rooting for Jason or the bad guy to kill these kids off because they were obnoxious. That was sort of what was happening to me, especially at the beginning of the movie. It's like, I don't care about any of these kids. But it was only, for me, what it was the style and the suspense that Plotkin built throughout. Because, like I said, I actually thought that it was clever, so we understand the heft of the mallet. There was that other, there was that dark ride that's taking them over to the actual Hellfest. And the lights start flickering, and then you see the man with the mask on. And it was a nice bait and switch because you think it's the killer. And then when it comes out, it was actually meant to be, like, And so I was like, okay, that was clever. And the way it was filmed, that was suspenseful. And when he's on top and the thing comes out and everybody, I really like, okay, that worked. It got me. I was like, that was cool.
It certainly had its moments.
I wish it had more.
That in itself, as a scene, I really did appreciate because your mind's thinking, because it's Hellfest, right? And part of the fun is like, okay, is it real? Is it not? And the fact of, we have an emergency or whatever they said. I'm trying to figure out like the right VO. But then there was an added line about try not to lose your guts or something like that.
Right.
And so that kind of clues you in that something's part of the ride, but maybe he's not part of the ride, certainly. And so it's like, okay.
And they had set it up too, or like we already knew what the killer's mask looked like.
Yeah.
So we, as an audience, much like Veronica, Brooke, we're like Brooke going, oh shit, she's really being followed because we don't know that there are other characters that are dressed like this. And the way in which they were using the red light that would go off and then the character would move and get closer. almost like being moved as a chess piece closer and closer. And she's trying to get out of this thing. I was like, okay, this is pretty good. My thing was, how is she going to get out of this? And then we hear the scream, and then it cuts. And then when we see that buggy come through, and the character on top of her, and then just gets up and get off, and they're like going, oh my God, that was amazing. I go, oh my God, that was clever. I go, they got me. It was a twist that got me.
Well, I will give the movie a lot of credit visually. I thought it worked well. They knew how to use images to their advantage. So, whether it is the lighting or in particular with he's called the Other for whatever reason, but the Other, right? He has the mask, but then our other clue, eventually we know we have to pay attention to not only the mask but the boot. And in that moment, we focused on the mask, and so we associated like, okay, boom. But once we have this more information, we know mask and boot.
Right.
And then the movie obviously started using that. Certainly when Taylor's about to be beheaded, and both times, I guess, realistically, he's got the boot.
Yeah.
And that's him.
And again, that scene too, I felt played out relatively well because, and again, I didn't know, and this is where the chicanery or the movie trickery was going on, because I thought, oh my God, this audience is actually going to see like a live beheading, and everybody's going to think that it's fake because we're at Hellfest. And so then when it wasn't a live beheading, I started wondering, what are they doing? Like, what would have been more interesting to have?
When you talk about like wanting to kill somebody,
yeah,
that was the moment I was, Taylor, please die.
Right.
Great acting, but I think the purpose of the acting was for me to hate Taylor.
Yes.
And I absolutely hated her. She was so cocky and like, oh, I've done laps around the 7 deadly sins. Good for you. Now
yes,
die.
she reminded me of one of the characters in Halloween 5, and because the character was so over the top, the director told her to be more and more over the top, but she became an annoying character. And you're like, annoying, and that's what I mean. In these these schlock B horror movies, they have annoying characters, and you start to root for the killer. You shouldn't necessarily start to root for the killer, but when characters like, and her character,
well, you start to empathize with the killer of like, okay, just kill her.
Shut up. Shut up. And that was interesting too, because it just made me wonder, did we miss an opportunity where there was an actual live beheading and nobody knows about it? And two, then I was wondering, is Tony Todd, and Tony Todd was the carnival barker, right? It was great to see Tony Todd back in a horror movie again, for me anyways. And is this traveling Hellfest? Like, really, like, is it more than just one? Do they just go town to town to town? Are they a serial carnival killer? Like,
it's a lot of prep. This carnival was big.
It was big, but, and so, but then when she actually gets killed, she's killed in front of, see, that was bold to me too, because the killer actually killed 2 people in broad view of everybody, where there was no question that these 2 people were being killed. And that's when the panic set off. And I was like, wow, they just had this killer. Before, he was doing it subtly, like within a ride, and then using the body as a prop or whatever. These 2 people were killed in front of everybody to see.
Well, that's I do think that was a missed opportunity, because if your ultimate goal is to cause panic anyway,
right?
I don't think what they gained by not beheading her actually wasn't that great, versus what if you really beheaded her and caused that commotion and everyone's like, oh, we're having fun, and you still get the moment with the follow-up with the security guy of like, oh, we're gonna have to call the police on you. It's like, no, that's her real head.
That's her head. I know.
And so you still get the same beats, but much more interestingly, I think.
I thought, and I was thinking that as I was watching it.
Especially if you're gonna kill her, you're still gonna kill her,
right?
So kill her.
And you're in that amusement park, and I think part of what makes the movie creepy, right, is that it's in an amusement park. It's a horror night amusement park. It's designed to scare people. There are mazes and people are in costumes and masks that are characters hired by. So if one of them turns out to be a serial killer, how do you know? Like, how do you, and granted, in today's world, there's a lot of video cameras going around, but even so, how do you know? And this is what I was getting back to years ago, and pretty much when I first moved to Los Angeles. I went with a group of friends, and I did the famous West Hollywood Halloween parade thing that they do, where they shut down like a ton of Santa Monica in West Hollywood, and it's just like a big people in costume just roam the street. And I was there with friends on this particular night too. I remember I was Michael Myers, which was good for me because a lot of people sort of kind of gave leeway. Had a fake knife and everything, but I was with friends. But I kept on thinking, is even though I saw security and cops, I was like, there's far too many people here. All you need is one nut job in a mask, and that can like just stab people as he or she's walking around. I don't want to give anybody ideas, but that's what I felt the premise to this movie was. Well, which is sort of creepy.
I mean, the idea of that, it's a very Hitchcock idea that danger can come at any moment.
Right.
It doesn't just have to be a parade. It doesn't have to be a theme park. I mean, the fact that Halloween exists and people walk around in costumes all across America at any moment, someone could be doing this.
Sure.
And does that mean like we should shut down Halloween? No, but it's that weird dichotomy. Danger comes from any moment. And so I did appreciate that. But here the difference is obviously people are like the further into the park we go, the further people are volunteering to be scared and the conditions under which they're being scared. Like it's one thing to touch somebody, but apparently here, at the end place, whatever we're calling it, and they can pick you up and run off with you.
Yes. Yeah, no, and that, like, at least the ones that I go to, Universal Horror Nights, which has always been fantastic. Whatever ones I've done, like spooky hayrides back in Boston and such, and I did a haunted hayride here in Los Angeles, which is also a good take for Halloween stuff. But the characters are given, and you understand, they're given very specific. They're not allowed to touch you. They can be sued. So they can be as scary as possible. That's what they're meant to do. So this one, and apparently it is based off of an actual horror amusement type of park where the characters are allowed to touch you. I forget what it's called. I've never done it.
Their insurance just went up.
Yeah.
Like, hey, did you see this movie?
Yeah, I've never done it. Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure. Listen, I think they do a great job with mazes that they have, especially if you go to like a Universal Horror Nights. I get scared enough. I don't need somebody lifting me up. Well, if you can lift me up, God bless you. But even like, I don't need somebody pushing and shoving me already. I think the jump scare is scary enough. I'm not even sure I'd be down for this.
Going back real quick to the moment with the beheading, I think one of the things that a critic or a cynic rather might say of doing it the way we proposed would be, well, then you lose the slow, methodical sort of killing, licking your chops, and that moment where she's like, oh, like, get me the hell out of here. But I think you could still, it still could have been accomplished, because at that point we know there's got to be a fake head, and she's like, hey, are you gonna put the fake head in, dude? Yeah, fake head.
Because afterwards there was no slow, methodical action. He chased him, stabbed her, turned around, stabbed the other guy right out in public, and there was nothing methodical about that. But you're right. I mean, you can build suspense where we as the audience have a feeling something's going to go awry because our heroine noticed the boots, and we're like, oh, okay, and she's trying to stop it. They already, and again, here's where it was clever. They just didn't take it to the next step, is that the cops are trying to, she's causing a panic. our main character. They're trying to pull her away. It's like, you know what, you're done. And meanwhile, we know it's taking place up on stage. And if there is a real beheading, again, the killer could reach into the basket, pull out the fake head to hand it to Tony Todd, but we know what really happened. And, Tony Todd's like, oh, yes, this is great. And the blood's spurting out. And people in the audience, and then you cut to the audience going, oh my God, that looks real. Look at how the blood is spurting out of there. To that effect, I think it would have played out better.
So let's talk about the climax, right? We
Sure.
go hell on earth, essentially, this entire maze. To be honest, I don't necessarily know what makes one maze scarier than the next, but supposedly this is like the end-all, be-all maze.
Right.
The only thing that actually makes it the end-all, be-all maze is that this is where our two surviving characters finally, go head-to-head with the killer. But I think, there wasn't that, like an animal when it plays with its prey.
Sure.
Elements, small things, but not fully executed.
True. And had it been, it would have been more Michael Myers-ish than this other. I'm going to make the comparison because in a sense, this character was in a very Michael Myers-ish, in which he stalked his victims. He stalked, he waited, he prayed, followed them. But taking it further, Michael Myers was or is a character that toys like a cat and mouse almost with the victims. Here, I just felt like Gavin, for example, knew that this person was following him, but they never, took it serious. So when it comes to the end, he doesn't end up like Bob in Halloween, who gets hung up on a cabinet. He puts up a fight and he's trying to be the person that he really isn't. But you don't really care as much because he wasn't part of the cat and mouse to begin with. And who is going to survive? What's the point? And you said it earlier that Gavin really didn't do anything to him, but this killer was just following these group of kids because a couple of them were, oh, you don't frighten me, get out of here, and whatever. Yeah, it was weird how he chose these kids.
Well, I think...
And he really zeroed in on them.
Well, at that point, yeah. And sometimes it's an opportunity, like even if the killer lives, if there's a surviving character besides the killer, it's an opportunity to have them grow. Like they escaped and lived another day because of something that they gained, something they didn't have before.
Right.
And in this moment, none of that existed. Like maybe it was the fact that her and Brooke were on shaky waters, and now, like, in order to survive, they had to fully work together.
Right.
And so, again, on paper, these bullet points work, but just the execution isn't fully realized.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I agree 100%.
That's a missed opportunity. At the end, they're hugging and so forth. And I don't know. In a sense, I was kind of let down and waiting for a line of like, at least we're going to Spain.
Well, yeah. See, that would have been that would have been so ridiculous at that point. But you're right in that. Yeah, and again, that's where the missed opportunity comes, and that's why I liken it to, you had really good pedigree in a movie like Halloween, and then Friday the 13th is an offshoot of that, pure and simple, and they used Friday the 13th used, to your point, they used a psycho Alfred Hitchcock kind of thing. They, a mother who's voicing her son, and the mother is actually doing the killing and such. But this movie was more of the schlockiness. Like they could have made it pretty decently. I wouldn't have minded if she was the only one of her friends to survive, and the why me of it all. Because that's what makes things a little more horrific when you don't know why, and we as the audience really don't know why. We don't know what is what's driving this person to do what he's doing, but you know, obviously has something about Halloween and all and about Hellfest or horror nights at amusement parks. Something happened. So is it important to have a motivation? In most cases, you don't need one.
But you do need you need not necessarily a motivation, but you need stakes or not implications. You need emotion.
You need emotion.
It's
right.
Yeah.
And when you look at your best horror movies, and I'm not even just talking slasher films, but when you're looking at your best horror movies, a lot of the Blumhouse ones, you're driven by the character. You like the character. You know, and I found it really interesting because Gregory Plotkin, he worked on one of my favorite horror movies of the past year, Happy Death Day. Mm-hmm. Now, this movie, Phil, when you look at Happy Death Day, it doesn't give a reason as to why, what the hell's going on, or why what is happening, this current loop, right? But you really fall in love with your main character. You want her to get out alive. So the reasons why stuff is happening isn't important, but the fact that she needs to get out of there alive is. And over here, we didn't have, there's no reason for me. To go to Spain was not incentive of me to like these characters more.
Yeah, these were just very generic lines of, ooh, we're going to give you this to you so you care. It's like, right. I really don't care.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's mad at Brooke because now she's living with Taylor. She has a problem with Taylor. I get why she would have a problem with Taylor.
Oh, I do too,
College
but I don't
versus high school or what, you know.
Yeah, but what was she calling her? Grade school?
Grade school, that's it.
I'm like, okay, it's like, again, I felt like I stepped in the middle of something that I have no idea. I was like the friend that's brought along, and I'm not part of this dynamic because I have no idea why you're calling her grade school. Like, there's no reference.
Well, I understood it as far as she's like a child, right? She gets scared easily. She doesn't do bad things, doesn't do drugs, doesn't this, you know, who knows? And we don't even know if she's a virgin or not. So that's what, to me, it implied. Okay. So I got it. But as far as, you know, I don't know. There was part of me like, okay, either the killer's going to kill her or you're going to stand up to her.
Right.
And give her to the killer to kill.
Yeah.
Like, hey, homie, we had a silent agreement. Here's her. Kill her. I'm out.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah.
But let's, why don't we shift into more of the production aspects.
Sure.
So, kicking things off, we'll start with the tie-ins to Happy Death Day, because there are a few.
Yeah.
Number one, our director, he's primarily an editor, right? So he was an editor for that movie. He was also an editor for Get Out, which was also last year.
Yeah, and that was a Blumhouse. I mean, his career actually is Plotkin's career, I think it's quite fascinating. And it really does improve, you know, with a little bit of hard work and some elbow grease. He went to school, I believe it was UCLA, I think he went to, but he went as an English major. So the film stuff sort of kind of came as an afterthought. He worked on a movie. He was a PA. And from then he just like wanted to try to become an editor. And he worked his way up, and he from Blumhouse, in fact, they gave him the gig to edit Paranormal Activity 2. And, you know, he was like, yeah, I took the job, even though he had a lot of people tell him, well, this is a low budget, shitty horror movie. What are you going to do that for? And he's like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And he did. And yeah, he just worked his way up, and he continues a relationship with Blumhouse, Happy Death Day, Get Out. And then he was given this opportunity by the likes of Galen Hurd. Like, okay, Walking Dead, but Terminator movie. She's had a relationship with James Cameron. She's a powerhouse woman in this industry. And here, we want you to direct this movie, which he said no to at first. Which I loved. He goes, I read the script. I thought it was okay. I thought there was more of a whodunit element. And being his love of horror, he said he gave some notes. They took his notes seriously, and they said, okay, we'll do this. You want to do this now? And goes, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
love that.
even it's a very fantastic story. And the other connection being the killer's mask was designed by the same person who designed the mask for Happy Death Day. So
and by working
symbiosis.
on it, he basically, because the mask in Happy Death Day it's laughably scary, right? And he really liked what the guy did with it. And he didn't really have a relationship with him, but he called the director of Happy Death Day, who put him in touch with him. And he's like, hey, I'm doing this movie. Can you help me out? And the guy was like, sure. And he came prepared. He came with tons of like different options that they went over until they came across the final mask, which is in itself, they did a good job. It's a creepy mask.
It is, because it's deformed. You can see that you can half see the eyes. Sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
So that certainly played in his favor. And for the most part, as we've kind of mentioned, the movie's not without merit. If you isolate small sections of it in terms of its editing and execution, in terms of performance and shooting, I think there is stuff there. There's stuff to be proud of. It's just
Absolutely.
not the whole doesn't fully connect.
And I don't disagree with that assessment at all. I also find it interesting too, because Plotkin does talk about, he was asked, well, what is your experience as an editor? What did you bring with that experience to directing? And he's like, oh my God, and this made a lot of sense to me. As an editor, I know what a director needs for coverage to pick up. And I can work with the director and say, this is what you're going to need. This is a great shot. And this to me, too, this was great. He goes, so as a director, I already have in my head, I know I'm going to have my master shot, but I also know what I'm going to need for coverage. So I'm going to give my editor like the best possible coverage to put this movie together. It was edited well. I wasn't confused about things. If anything, the editing built suspense in certain scenes, like the one we talked about with the buggy and the other. I think he has a career in directing these sort of things, especially with Blumhouse, if he wants to. I think it can only get better.
Yeah, and I think that's true in terms of once you also know the exact coverage you want, so you tend to not shoot overly. So, for example, I'm sure he knows, okay, the foot is going to be a major part of it, so I got to get the foot a lot of times. So when you talk about coverage, he's got his master shot, but we're going to specifically get that foot.
Right. The boot.
And I also think he knows the pacing of certain things. He knows when to be fast, when to be slow.
Right.
And so the way the killer walks, like that plays a role into it. And one of the things I really did love was the combination of the sound. I thought the score itself for this was one of the highlights.
It was, and I saw this in like an IMAX kind of presentation, and the sound was great because you're getting the horror house sounds, and they were playing all over to put that audience almost as if they were in the maze themselves, and it sounded really good. The music wasn't really overdone whatsoever, and I felt that it worked. I felt that it worked too. And those are, again, going back, those are the parts that I enjoyed. And I really like horror movies, and there were times where it was suspenseful for me. I didn't buy the whole thing. I don't think the entire thing is super, but I at least appreciated what he attempted, and he didn't disrespect the genre that he was trying to pay homage to. So,
No, not at all.
yeah.
Interestingly enough, like the thing that excites me is that there could be a sequel. Because it's often like if this was one and done, I'd be bummed because to me it's a missed opportunity. The fact that it could continue at least showcases that, okay, we have room for improvement, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we improve.
True. And sometimes, and that it's happened. It's happened with the movie Ouija. Ouija's a great example. That the first movie was bad. Like, I disliked it. I didn't dislike Hellfest as much as I disliked the first Ouija movie. When they announced they were going to make a sequel to Ouija, I'm like, are they out of their minds? The first movie was horrible. The second movie was really
horrific.
Good. It was horrific. It was a really good movie. Yeah. And I was like, damn, that doesn't happen in horror often. The other fantastic example that I can say is Annabelle. Marissa saw that. We saw the original. Marissa was scared out of her seat. Oh, I really have good memories of that.
That movie's terrifying.
It's not a good movie. Annabelle Creation, they made a better movie. And the first one wasn't that great, but the second one was really good. So, come on. Blocking, you're from the Blumhouse school there. Make a better sequel. And you've already laid the ground rules for Hellfest. Make a better sequel.
Yeah.
Like, now that you set us up with that ending, which was kind of cool and creepy. And what does he do? And what does the father do? He gives her the doll.
Yeah.
Oh, look what I have for you.
Of course.
I thought that was very clever.
It was. It's a very chilling thing to end on, and certainly leaves you intrigued and, as I said, wanting more.
Yeah.
One of the interesting parts in terms of promotion, they have teamed up with Six Flags in LA, St. Louis, and Chicago, scheduled. It already started up September 28th all the way to October 31st. They will have a walkthrough haunted house experience with Hellfest.
Yep.
Now, I have not yet been. I don't know if they can touch you. I doubt it.
No, I didn't know they're not supposed to at Six Flags. But I did find the one of the inspirations, haunted things, is this thing called Netherworld. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the, definitely inspirations for this Hellfest that he did. But yeah, I mean, from a promotion standpoint, it makes sense. You do it in Six Flags, because you can get a couple of them. I mean, it's not going to be done at Disney. So, I get it.
I want to get your opinion on the posters, because a lot of them showcase kind of the amusement park aspects, but it didn't have really our kids.
There was one that was a really, it was a throwback poster where you had this isn't it. It's one of the more recent ones that came out for Hellfest. But it was definitely one of those that looked as if it were like a painting. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like using it was photorealistic art, but not using photographs. And I thought that it was really cool. The promotion for this movie, they came out with, it was limited. I mean, look, they took a page, that's the one. That's the one. I like that one. And you have the characters there. And you like
for those of you on audio,
you can't see it.
Just Google it, and you can sort of find it. It's the top part is red and the bottom half is dark bluish. So if that's any indication of what the poster is.
Yeah, that's a good poster. That's a good poster. The trailer, I saw the first trailer, I thought, oh, it was okay. I remember seeing it at CinemaCon, and it sort of stuck out from everything else we'd been seeing that day. But it wasn't until like their most recent one that I was like, okay. The more I saw it, I was like, I'm getting into this. I mean, I like horror movies. I like the idea and the concept behind it. So I'm not saying, I didn't go in with the highest of expectations. It didn't make me angry. And I thought the marketing was decent, especially like that's a good poster. That has what you want. And it really is a great throwback kind of a poster, I felt. But the first one, you're right. It doesn't. Yeah,
I mean, the premise hooked me, and I know it hooked a lot of people that I know. And the sad part is that they felt a little bit let down. And, C on Cinema Score certainly indicates.
That's not good. Not good. And it was, I think the last I checked too, 44% on Rotten Tomatoes, which for a horror movie doesn't necessarily mean, it's
death.
not like the death for a horror movie, 44. If you're getting anywhere above 50%, you're doing pretty good. But a C, that's not good.
On Cinema Score,
yeah. A C on Cinema Score, that's a thumbs down. And people really weren't enjoying themselves. They didn't feel scared. And maybe taking a point from you, maybe they felt that to be scared you need stakes. And I'm not talking the kind you order at a steakhouse. There needs to be some stakes involved. There really wasn't any. But again, when you watch some of these schlocky Hell Night, Prom Night kind of movies, or even My Bloody Valentine.
Here's the thing. Then in that sense, then go for it. Have fun with it. Be a Zombievers and have an absolutely ridiculous premise of what is this?
Right.
And it didn't necessarily have it had elements of good filmmaking, of good horror, but not fully realized. And conversely, it had none of the comedy. I think people were expecting this to be just an all-out ridiculous, perhaps slasher comedy.
Yeah, and I think Blumhouse has spoiled the horror-going audience, because when you go see their movies, they're a little bit higher, like a Happy Death Day, or even a Get Out, if you want to put that in a horror. They've been making, within these past few years, some quality horror that have legitimately been scaring people. So that's what this has that air of being that kind of a movie. And when you look at the budget, $5.5 million, that's great. Yeah. But I think people had the Blumhouse expectation. Even though the guy came from Blumhouse, and most of the people don't care. They don't know that he worked on those other movies, and unless they really look him up. They're just going in because they saw it. It looks like this type of a movie, and it didn't really deliver. Doesn't really deliver that. And I think that's where the C comes in. That hurts you later on down the line.
The good news is, it raked in about 5.1 million. So not the highest, but in terms of its budget, there's a way to make it back. I don't know what they spent on advertising and all that, but I think it can make its money back.
Yeah, I mean, if there were 5.5 million, let's go low end. Hard prints and advertising. They went out on just a little over 2,000 locations, 2,297. It came in at number 6. For 5.5, you got to figure at least 10 to they probably 15 plus million all in. Hard drives, advertising, billboards, television, which I don't recall seeing a lot on TV. So it did open up in foreign territory. Not great. Our total is almost $7.5 million. They could make it up in ancillary markets if it expands. It could do some more. It can do some more money. A sequel isn't out of the realm, but even as bad as Annabelle was, or even as bad as the first Ouija movie was, they made money. So you can understand why they say, well, let's go back to that well, but we can do it better. We can take the criticism and make better movies. If they do decide to do that, and I would have no qualms, make Hellfest 2 better. Yeah.
I agree. Well, that does it for our dissection of Hellfest. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. We've certainly enjoyed talking about it, but the conversation doesn't have to end just because we go off air. No, that's what the comment section's for. We like to interact with you guys. A lot of you have very interesting opinions, so we truly do appreciate that.
They do. And they know how to interact.
Indeed.
And nicely, too.
Yes, you guys are very, very smart. What I was saying about me being stupid, you guys are the opposite of that. In the meantime, you can also interact with us more directly, let's say, at DMovies1701 for Demetri. That's his Twitter handle, so he will...
Please, support. I'm always throwing stuff out about horror movies, too. We do a lot of... we talk a lot of horror on the Popcorn Talk, the other show that I'm on, Meet the Movie Press. We're always talking about horror. We even have our own little segment called the Blumhouse Corner. So Yeah, I'm into horror big time. Going to a horror convention, a Halloween convention next week. Can't wait to see that movie. But interact, yeah, please do. It's a ton of fun.
Absolutely. And speaking of horror movies, we have lots of horror movies in our collective past. So if you want to catch up on some of them, absolutely. To interact directly with me, I'm at Phil Svitek, and shout out to Marissa in the booth at Serafini TV if you want to tweet her some scares. And last but not least, we must update you on what's coming down the pipeline. A Star is Born we're covering next week. We're also going to cover the new Venom movie. And beyond that, now we're heading into some great movies. Not that we weren't before, but now we shift from summer to fall, different season. We're going to be doing Halloween as well, the new one. So lots to look forward to. We'll keep you updated. But next week, it is A Star is Born, and it is Venom.
And don't we have some news to share with our audiences as to how
I have
else
news.
We can...
Oh, we're on Spotify.
We're on Spotify.
That's right. So if you're an audio listener, and a lot of you guys are, and Spotify is a great place to listen to stuff. A lot of you listen to music there. Well, guess what? Now you can listen to podcasts, more specifically ours, and also, as Demetri mentioned, Meet the Movie Press and horror movie news. Shout out to all the Popcorn Talk shows. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.